Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Paraspar Talk, organized by the Office of Communication, Indian Institute of Science. Today we have a very special speaker who needs no introduction. She is not only Karnataka's pride, but the entire nation's pride as well. Please join me in welcoming Ashwini Nachappa to our institute. Just following our practice, I'll briefly introduce the speaker. Ashwini Nachappa is an acclaimed Indian Olympian and Arjuna Awardee whose career spans athletics, acting, governance, and social activism. She represented India in 1988's Seoul Olympics, twice in Asian Games in 1986 and 1990, and twice in World Athletics Championship 1987 and 1991. Her recognitions include the Sports Writer Award in 1986, Dashara Award in 1987, Rajyotsava Award in 1990, and the prestigious Arjuna Award in 1990, and the Kempegowda Award in 2003, among others from state and national institutions. Beyond sports, she has worked at Vijaya Bank, headed PR and publicity, and performed as an actor in 5 Telugu films, including a biopic named Ashwini. She is a prominent sports activist and has held leadership roles in Clean Sports India, Bangalore Urban District Athletics Association, and Karnataka Athletics Association. She has contributed to drafting sports policies and committees to improve national training centers. As founder of Ashwini Sports Foundation, she champions sports development, while as a trustee and commentator, she engages in education and advocacy for athletes and social issues. We are eager to hear her speak about her varied and accomplished career journey and invite her to give a talk.
Namaskar, good evening. Thank you. It's been an honor to come back to this campus after a few decades. I was here, I think, when the President of India came, and I was associated with the Parikrama Humanity Foundation. They had the Science Fest here, and he came to inaugurate it. So it's always good to be back in this wonderful, huge campus where one gets lost, but one is also inspired to do great things. Each of us have our own journeys in life, and beyond the finish line lies a world which is unseen, full of struggles, disappointments, failures, courage, there's growth. And I believe that everyone's journey is almost similar. One has to traverse that route to be able to emerge in whichever field one undertakes successfully. So in that journey, I think beyond that finish line and beyond the finish tape, beyond the medals and recognition, I think what was important is the manner in which it shaped me to the person I have become today. And it wouldn't have been possible without the support of my family and the people who have touched my lives through that journey, whether it's the groundsmen who raked my long jump pit to keeping my hurdles, to somebody as my coach or my mentor, and to my parents. So in that journey, we take along a lot of people, and I think one must be have that gratitude for each and every one of them. I think that's a big learning, which we don't really find amongst young children today. That somewhere gratitude towards parents, towards even the person who took care or cooked at your home, that gratitude needs to come back into society. Now, telling my story, I think I started out as a young kid, really didn't know what athletics meant. My dad used to work for Birla Rayons in Calcutta, and way back in the 70s, the factory would go on months together lockouts. So hailing from Coog, though I never lived in Coog, I was born in Coog, but lived since my dad was working in Calcutta, moved to Bangalore where our cousins were, so that my parents thought we could just pursue an education, a good quality education, without any distractions and disturbances of the factory and union life there. And it just so happened that the house was just next to Kantirava Stadium, and my mother would not allow my sister and myself to play on the streets. So she would come pick us up from school, change, we would have a cup of tea or whatever, snacks, and we would head to the stadium, which was just about 500 meters away. I love to run. Probably my name means a horse. It also means a star, and I probably was meant to run. My sister would read her Amar Chitra Kathas at the end of the stadium corner, and I would be running. There used to be a coach called Mohinder Singh Gill, who would bribe. We were about 6 or 7 of us, aged at about 7, 8, around that category, and he would bribe us with that 5 paisa nutrient sweets. I think people here would know those nutrient sweets were very famous back then. And for every lap, he would bribe us with whoever came first with a chocolate. And I think I started collecting more number of chocolates, but also in a way, it created a habit for me to appear on the track, irrespective of anything, to collect those nutrient sweets. And I think the first lesson in life for me, in hindsight, when I look at life and my journey so far, is the joy it brought me doing the sport that I liked or doing the activity that I liked, and enjoying that process without the end result, creating that habit every single day. And I think that is what is important when you like something. We often hear people say, you must have passion in what you do. But passion is nothing but the interest in what you do. If you have that interest drives passion. And therefore, I feel that every child in whichever field, or every person in whichever field, must find that joy, must have that pleasure in coming to a workplace, to an institution, to a track, appear on that. And that interest will eventually drive the momentum to take that journey forward. So the joy of running around the track, the joy of feeling the wind against my face, and the joy of simply showing up on the track was important to me. So eventually, the coach who used to bribe us with the chocolates saw some spark in me and said, let's start somewhat a structured training by the age of 8 and 9. And both my sister and me became the Bangalore school champion, the Karnataka state junior champion. So in a way, I was fortunate, maybe because I loved what I was doing, I loved the process. I started on a winning note. And I was fortunate for that, because the days when we started out, India's greatest athletes back then were training on that field. And we had just a cinder track. We also had the cyclist, cycling around, because we had a velodrome. Those who know Kantirava Stadium back then. My parents didn't come from an athletic background. Neither, but they say the Kodava is, either born with a gun or either a hockey stick. But Kodavas had that blood in them, and my parents thought it was best. My dad continued working in Calcutta to earn. He was the only earning member in the family, and to support 2 convent education students, children, and to live in Bangalore. So it took a toll financially for us, but I think to emerge out of that, athletics was the way for me and for my sister. I won my first nationals when I was about 12 years old. I took part in under 13. It was a great moment of pride, not just for me, but for my family itself, when the then Chief Minister, Mr. Gundarao, who was watching the event at the stadium, came down after I won the race and gave me 1,000 rupees. For me, that was like a lakh of rupees. It was the first medal that an athlete of the Karnataka team brought for the state. So at that age, for a chief minister to come down to the track and give me 1,000 rupees in front of everybody was a great motivating factor. And also the joy it brought on my mom's face. For all the struggles that we went and were going through, this was, of course, a turning point in my career, and there was no looking back. So, of course, then eventually we started winning many nationals under different age categories. The age categories, as we moved up, competition gets tougher, and that's what happens in all our lives. Competition gets tougher, so what do you do then? You've got to plan differently. And we didn't have the kind of support system that you see in today's sporting environment, where you have from a masseur to a sports psychologist to a physiotherapist. You don't have any of that. Most of what we have learned has been self-learning. We walked to school because we had no money. We came back walking, appeared on the track, did our training, walked back home. It's only when I got into Mount Carmel College that I would get 2 rupees to go by bus, 50 paisa up and down, and 1 rupee to have something whenever I attended college. Because in those days also, we never had camps in Bangalore. We had, as 13, 14-year-old child, I remember in the 82 Asian Games, I was in the 9th grade, and 1.5 months camp in Patiala, which I had never been to. And there was no money. The governments didn't support us much. We traveled on unreserved compartments near the toilets and reached. But today's children will not do that. Our parents will not do that. I mean, I with 2 young daughters, not young anymore, both are married almost, but 2 daughters, I wouldn't. My daughter was a national badminton player. But I traveled with her because it just wasn't a safe scenario to make a young girl travel. So I think what it did was, having seen my mother so strong, I think it created great amount of resilience. It gave me a lot of courage. It gave me a lot of confidence to stand on my feet. Winning medals, of course, was always the byproduct of the process that I followed. And winning brought in some amount of money. In those days, we would get UTIs from the government, a small amount, which would mature when I retired. Some of them matured when I retired. So actually, there was no financial support as such. But we didn't run for the finance aspect of it. We brought back the state a medal. We brought back a nation a medal. That was the most important thing, and to be recognized. So it just so happened, even during that time, is to find some amount of security in our lives. And by the time I was in my 12th, second PUC, I came back just for the exams because I was in Patiala, as I had said, months together, camps, so you really don't have, you don't go to a regular college as such. It needed a lot of time to plan, to prepare, and to manage time. And I think that was a great learning, because for every event that you take part, in sports, if you'll have played sport, there are 3 or 4 seasons to playing sport. You have an off season where you build stamina depending on your event, then you have a pre-season, then you have a season, then you have a post-season. So there are different kinds of preparation, depends on different types of events and different sport. So you had to prepare for the examination, so I had to come back and make time where I eased out my training schedules with my coach and made more time to catch up on academics. So I think for that, I don't see many young children in today's world managing time. Because it's always easy for everybody to complain and say, there's too much of pressure. Pressure is there for everyone to handle. And if we don't allow them to experience pressure and tension, how do you expect them to handle life itself, which is full of challenges? Most of my colleagues would say, who ran with me and stopped and are in various places of, in various fields, say, oh, you've been so lucky. It's not luck. I mean, we can sit across doing nothing and say he or she is lucky. It took my whole life as a young child. I never went for movies. I never went out shopping. I never went out with friends. It was a sacrifice my family and I did to achieve what I achieved. It was tough times. My first spikes, running spikes, we couldn't afford spikes. For us, it was just the Bata shoes. You polish it, the same shoes you run on the track. If it wears out, the socks wears out, you put a rubber band around it. We've done all of that. So I don't believe in people who sit across and say that, he or she is lucky, because all of us who have achieved in their respective field have traveled that journey of disappointments, of, failures. And I, having run a school, I'm running a school today, I have about 850 students from Montessori up to grade 12 in Coog. But I also have my sports foundation with athletics, shooting, and hockey as the core sports. And I see young children and parents say, oh, there's so much of pressure, there's so much of pressure. You have the best facilities, you have the best trainers, you are living in the campus, you just have to deliver. And deliver what? And that's why I tell every child is delivering does not mean you have to be at the Olympic team. At your age, what you're capable of doing, if you can improve your time from your last week's time, is better. That is improvement. And so in education, if you can, one of my students, Manjunath, who became a state champion in 400 meters, he came from Mandya and he had no clue what sport was. So we put him in hurdles and he trained. He became the state champion. He was very bad in math. And my math teacher, Sanil, would say, ma'am, he's so bad in math, let him stay back. I said, it doesn't matter. You can give him extra classes, but let him just participate because he loves sports. And he got an 80% in his boards because he stood out in the class as a performer. May not be in academics, but as a performer. But what it brought to him was confidence, was courage. And that is what is the biggest learning in sport. Medals aside, that is what it teaches you and prepares you for life. And that's why I urge all children. I went around the campus and came. I saw just a few students on the cycle, but most of them were on their phone. In a campus like this, I think we must engage students in even team sport, build that fellowship, build that community. It's important. It's important for each one of us to take care of our own health first. And I think that is what I would like to tell, having gone through this campus and coming back after so many years. That's something that you all can consciously take an effort in doing, even have probably monthly runs, get the running community going, run against your own self. And I think that's very encouraging to bring the community together. The other thing was commitment and responsibility, and I also said time management was very important. The other thing was adaptability and introspection. I think before I speak about adaptability is also I'd like to give an instance. When I came back from the 86 Asian Games, back then there was nobody to assess an athlete to say, okay, she is fit for sprints or for jumps or for throws. So what happens at a young age, we're trying out different. So I started out as a hurdler, then I became a sprinter, I did long jump. So I took part in the Asian Games for long jump in 86. I came back and I wanted to change my coach, and it's about adapting to new situations. How one adapts to this situation. I changed to a completely different event, to the 400 meters, the 200 and the 400 meters. and my rival was P.T. Usha. The best athlete Asia has ever produced. She was India's best athlete. And of course, there was Shiny. Shiny was doing the 800 meters. We had Vandana, all of them. And coming second to Usha became a norm. So I wasn't really thinking, okay, it doesn't matter. Anyway, she is the greatest athlete. She is, So there was no question of even looking at coming first. Until I met a sports psychologist. I was training for some championship, I don't remember, and he had come down from the US, and he watched me train, and he came down to the ground, and he introduced himself, said, I'm Dr. Rupan Das, I'm a sports psychologist, I've just come from the US and exploring opportunities here. Would you like to do a session of mind training? I had no clue what sports psychologist meant or what mind training was. And I took a chance. I said, sure, let me try it. And right then, after my training, on that velodrome, he made me lie up, sit down, and he was just doing a session of, basically what we call today meditation. And then I realized that I had to work mentally hard, not just physically, because everybody works physically hard. To prepare myself mentally was a different game altogether. So I started, he was there for about 2-3 months in Bangalore, and I would go 3 or 4 times a week, or he would come to the stadium. And we started doing mind training. So it's then that I realized everything is purely mind over matter. So I would do my mind training in an alpha state, visualize my training sessions, visualize the time that I run, visualize my off the blocks, visualize in all this that I started preparing mentally. When I appeared on the track, I knew exactly what I was there to deliver. It wasn't the competitor I was running against on my right or left, it was the time that I set against for myself. So instead of running against the person, I started running against time and focusing. So adaptability to that situation was different. It took a lot of effort. It was new, but I think taking chances in life sometimes works in your favor if you really do it with the right intent. And then adapting to that and also taking responsibility of your actions. That was important. If I didn't do a session properly, I should come back the next week and say, or analyze and say, this didn't happen this week. I didn't clock that time. I didn't run the last 50 well, or I didn't run the curve well. So unless you analyze, you have to put in. We didn't have a sports education. Most people said, oh, you just run. Today, there is a science to everything. And I want the Indian Institute of Science to pay a lot of attention to sport because it's such a growing sporting environment that we have in our country. We are still dependent on foreign coaches, on foreign psychologists, on the support system. It is something for young children to take up and contribute to the betterment of the sporting nation. You all have so much to offer in terms of analysis of performance, in terms of the mindset of these athletes, in terms of preparing. There's so much that one can do. So that is one. Adaptability also came when I beat Usha. Of course, there was a lot of media hype, naturally, because she was the unbeatable queen. And then I had the producer and a director sit in Nehru Stadium in Delhi, watch me actually beat that race, beat Usha in that race, filmed it without permission in the Nehru Stadium, without my knowledge also. And they had decided that this will be the girl to do the film. And I, coming from a sports background, of course I said no to them instantly. But they pressurized me and they said, okay, just give it a shot. And I've never acted, beyond giving speech or beyond being the school captain or a head, school captain in a school, really not been on a stage. And I took up that challenge. I said, okay, I have 40 days of gap. When I cool down my sessions after the Asian Games, I'll give you 40 days. And the movie was made in 40 days. At least my part was made in 40. I didn't think it would be a hit, but it became a major hit. And it was dubbed to other languages. And of course, then I did a couple more. So, as I said, adapting from a very disciplined field, sport, to going into the movies, a world unknown to me. But I took what I learned on my field back to my shooting area. So there would be no shooting between 5 to 6. And I would take my lightman to cameraman to everybody for a jog, including sometimes my director and if the producer is available, and just bring about a culture of just kind of fit being together. So I didn't have a makeup artist or a makeup costume guy and nothing. Whoever was on set, I would just get everybody together and just do my part. But it took a lot of, since I took that risk, it was also, I was accountable for my decision. And I think that was important. And giving that, though it was a Telugu film, I had to learn the language. It was worse than my board exam because my director would sit with me in the night with the dialogues. Though it was dubbed, I had to, say my dialogues on the set. It was a great experience. And I think what I learned is never to just say, this is a bad movie. Because so many hundreds of people work to make that film. It's a lot of effort that goes in from the boy who was just standing and fanning you to the guy who's actually, it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of effort. So every field, that's why I started out, so every field has its journey. Every field is tough. So it was a great experience, but it wasn't something that I would like to do. And I decided, I think I was expecting my first baby, and I said, I don't want to do it anymore. I have personally believed, whether it was in sports, whether it was films, whether it was my banking career, I always wanted to go out with grace. When I retired, they said, why do you want to quit? You're just on your peak. But we also self-consciously have to decide, is there something beyond this that I can achieve, given the circumstances? Financially, I needed the money, though I had a job in the bank. I didn't have a home, so it was important to build a home for my parents, because I don't know where I would be. So the responsibility was huge. My sister went off to the US on a full-fledged scholarship because she came second in the World Juniors. So it was me to fend my family. And that responsibility I took very seriously. So I did the films, I built my house, and I also was working for the bank. I was a sports officer also in the bank while taking care of the PR publicity, worked under 7 chairmen, developed great basketball, cricket, and athletics and kabaddi teams. And one fine morning, I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. I didn't like my new chairman who had come in, my 7th chairman. I didn't like him. It just didn't work well. So I went, before my stenographer and clerk came into the office, I typed my own resignation, and I went and gave it to my GM. And I didn't look back. I just didn't look back. And it kind of sent shockwaves to all the 1,000 branches because I was handling all their PR publicity. Back then it was all centralized. It wasn't, now you have zones and they give it to the zones. And I don't regret it, because probably God has been really, really kind from where I've come to where I stand today in taking chances in life, but all with clarity and great intent. And I believe that when you do something with great intent, there will always be results. I think intent, accountability, responsibility is very, very, and integrity. I mean, I could have done many things in life. I was a blacklisted athlete because I always fought why one should be given special privilege and not the rest of the Indian team, why one should be given special breakfast and we have heaps of omelette when we come back to just see that, and you don't want to eat. And I would, though I was one of the youngest members in the team, had dharnas then, brought in the sports minister to set it all right. So in a way, I firmly stand my ground if I believe there is injustice, and so should everybody else. Because the intent is not to hurt anybody, but intent is you're part of an Indian team, you should be treated equally. And I think that was the message that I was sending out. And thankfully today it's in much better situation, I hope. So finally, closing thoughts on what I did when I resigned is I was working, I was volunteering. I was an advisory board member of Parikrama Humanity Foundation. I was also running the Special Olympics in India. I was one of the executive board member of the Special Olympics. We had about 80,000 mentally challenged athletes in this program across the country. My heart lies with the children, and I think that's what I'm good at. I would love to be able to contribute back to society in the best way I can and in the best field that I know. And so yes, we won hordes of medals in Winter Games for the Special Olympics in various years, in the Winter and Summer Games. Then I started with Parikrama Humanity Foundation, where I'm not sure how many of you all know about it, the slum and orphan children who get into mainstream education. And yes, from getting role models for these kids coming from the slums, such as Vijay Amritraj or Sachin Tendulkar, Rahul Dravid, getting them to see these models. And today, they've all grown in their respective fields, some settled in Dubai, working very hard, some in industry, some in hotel management. So it's great to see these young kids. But what I set for them is a sports plan. And today I think Parikrama kids thrive on sports. And that's the real game changer. Because when they took part in sports, they were bare feet. And the first, Mr. Mohandas Pai and I would organize the KPMG inter-school meets. We did it for about 14 years. From 300, 400 students, it grew to 3,400 students. And we had Akshay Patra giving that 3 days lunch for all these participants. And that's when I fielded the Parikrama team. They were against the best in Bangalore, who had Nike shoes, Adidas shoes, and my kids were barefoot. And for 4 consecutive years, they became champions, beating the rest of these field. And they said, Akka, just get us spikes and shoes. That was all that they wanted. So the joy that brings to their faces when these small things matter, we take it as a small thing, but for them, it's huge. And having worked with all these kids, my husband came from a business background, and he was also a former Indian junior hockey player. In Coog, we really didn't have much. Everybody studied in Bishop Cotton's, Baldwin, came to Bangalore or to Ooty or went to Mangalore. There was no real development as such then, and it was that when I resigned, we decided to start an institution in Coog. Not coming from an academic background, but I just both of us wanted to bring into that institution how we grew up in school, having sports integrated into our curriculum, and let every child experience the joy of sport. We started with 25 kids, and today we are 850 kids to our maximum. We don't take more than that. 21 years in running. We just finished 10 days back, our 18th graduation ceremony. And I'm still learning because the process doesn't stop. Learning is a continuous effort, and I think the intent of doing something and giving back to society in whichever manner one can is something very close to my heart. And I want to develop that community, whether it's a sporting community, whether it is my own Kodagu community that I live in. So in closing, I would like to say that winning medals gave me recognition, but discipline gave me character. Failure gave me the resilience that most of these kids don't want to even experience. Everybody has a chance to fail. We must allow them to fail. We have to, otherwise there is no learning. It cannot be comfort all the time. Failure is just that one event. It is not the person, and I think that's what we need to drive to the children. You can always bounce back. So don't look at failure as the end of the road. Have patience. In a field like sports, it takes 6 to 7 years to even come up to a stage where people notice you if you're good. If you see the Indian cricket team, most of them have come from humble backgrounds. You see the boxing team, or you see the wrestlers from various akhadas in Haryana. They all come from backgrounds, but their parents support them. And I think for me, the huge blessing was the support from my parents, to just do whatever with no questions as long as I came back home safe. I think that was very important. Adaptability gave me growth in everything that I did, and letting go with grace gave me peace. So the real victory in life is not crossing the finish line, it is who you become after crossing that finish line. So thank you.
Oh, hello, ma'am. So I'm actually a recreational runner. So,
I see the Save the Soil.
Yeah.
So did you take part in Sadhguru's?
Yes.
Yes, okay, good.
So my question to you is, like, how was training in your days different from these days?
How was?
Training.
Training. Today there is so much of science applied to training. We just ran because we didn't know which muscle we were using. We didn't know what kind of, spikes we ran with. There was no education in sport. There was just no education in sport. Our coach told us, okay, 200 meters repetition, 5 times, 3 sets. You just did it. Because our entire trust was on the coach. But there was no learning. You sit down and you say that, these are the muscles you need to work on. These are the sports science has developed. That is why I say Indian Institute has so much to offer. Today we have sports sciences come up in every aspect. Whether it is, and it is so specific, whether it is a shot put or a golf swing. So we didn't have that kind of luxury. We had the only thing we had was one masseur for the entire contingent. So after training, all of us would lie down in the stadium and he'll go, just relax the muscles one after the other. That was it. How do we get the lactic acid? How do we, there's so many things to it. Which are the areas that you develop? Whether I was a very powerful runner, but Usha was a very fibrous runner, if you see her muscle constitution. So she had a different way of doing her weight training. I was a more power runner, so I was like the Ben Johnson, doing more of, 180 squats and all those kind of things. So different techniques for different people. So it is India hasn't reached that aspect, though it has changed. It's just to give you an example. Olympic athletes who take part in swimming, in their training, they take blood samples from their earlobe and determine what is the kind of training they will do the next day. What is the load they will take the next day. Their shoes that is built for one race. So you do that race specific for your height, weight, the way you run. We haven't reached there yet. And I think if we want to be in par with the world and we want to become the world's sporting nation, there is much to be done in terms of technology, science and technology.
Thank you, madam.
Good evening, nice talk. So, you might be knowing IISc is opening the medical school from this year.
Okay.
And also IISc has pretty decent sports community who participate in ISMs and all. So, now, how do you see IISc can contribute to have more Olympians with the field of like medical, sports, medicine, and also like how the institute can have more sports eminent people from the institute?
Okay, from the institute, see, for any Olympian, you've got to start at the age of 8-10, because it takes you at least 15-20 years of training to reach that. Okay, so I wouldn't say that you should be looking at producing Olympic athletes at the Indian Institute of Science, but you should build a sporting community. Sporting community leads to many, many things on a personal level as well as an institutional level. And that's what you need to work on, but also become the best institute in contributing to science and technology of sport, so that we don't have to go to the outside world and seek them, but we can develop our own people and personnel for a Viksit Bharat.
Thank you for enlightening us with your talk, ma'am. It was really inspirational.
Thank you.
For sharing a glimpse of your story. I wanted to ask a question. Doesn't it bother you that the parenting attitude in India centers around progressing in academics and still treats sports as something extracurricular? Because in a country of billions of people, we still have single-digit Olympic medals all the time. What can we do as a country to, instill a different attitude when it comes to parenting, in encouraging children to pursue sports rather than, forcing them to go into academics? You see talent sprouting up in gullies everywhere, like the children who genuinely stand out, but they are forced to go into academics. So what do you think? Since you have been part of both the dimensions, sports as well as academia, I'd like to hear your thoughts.
I can proudly say that I'm a product of school games. I'm not joking. We didn't have buses. We walked everywhere. So you have the BSA sports, which used to be like the Bangalore school sports used to be like the mini Olympics for young kids. So you had St. Joseph's walk-in, you have Bishop Cotton's walk, you have Sapphire's walk, Baldwin's walk, Sacred Heart's walk, all walking and culminating in one space, Kanchirva Stadium, to take part in the annual BSA meet. I was 8 or 9, as I said, I became the Bangalore school champion, my sister and myself. At that same time, for the finals, or maybe the semi-finals and final 2 days, it used to be a 2 or 3 days event. The principal would bring grade 7, 8, 9 as cheerleaders. So our audience was so big, and each school year on had their designated seats. It didn't matter whether you go unoccupied. Everybody knows Sacred Hearts would sit here, Bishop Cotton's would sit here, Cluny Convent would sit there, Josephites would sit there. And when we walked to the stadium, the general public would come to see what is happening. So when we started, that was a change, because everybody encouraged us to go there and take part. It was not just athletics. We had basketball, we had hockey, and it was a pride of every institution to perform and be known as athletes from this go into the state or go into the nationals. And that's how in that era you see most of us who have achieved came from this background. Fast forward when I started becoming, when I resigned and started taking up administration of sport, And it was a huge effort, as I said, the KPMG event, or to even revive the inter-school sports. Because despite letters, I had to go meet principals and beg them, please field a team, please field a team. So the mindset changed. It's not just the parents. And same, my daughter was in badminton in one of the good schools here. She was training with Prakash Padkone. She was in the same league as PV Sindhu, under 16. They were going to all the championships all over. But one fine day in the 10th, the teacher called us. But before that, she called her and said, "You're bringing down the class average." And it shattered her dreams. She was such a fine athlete, not that because she's my daughter, but, Gopi saw her and gave her a new racket, a very fancy racket, because she was so talented. And she just told her teacher, said, "You've just let down the class, you're bringing down the class average." She was training 6 hours a day. 5:30, I would take her for training, finish, come back, she changes, I feed her in the car, leave her to school, I go to work, pick her up at 2:30, sometimes training is in Sai, so from Bangalore city you go to Sai, and you come back, and by Tuesday, Wednesday, the child is exhausted. So you're not sensitive to that. You're not sensitive to that child performing elsewhere other than doing your own class average. And I think that led to her just giving up the sport completely. The pressure that was built in the classroom, then she went to the US, she did her, but she just took such an aversion to sport because everybody looked down on her because she was, and I would go around telling, if she's a 50% average student is more than enough, because she's not spending so much time with books, she's spending more on this. And the parents would call me up and say, "Don't give such statement, it demoralizes our students to study." So that's the environment that changed. And I also believe in cities, we pamper our kids too much. So the real hunger in the belly comes from rural areas. You take Haryana, you take Bihar, you take Jharkhand, you take Odisha. And why was Odisha able to promote hockey to this extent? Just a fine example of how governments can pitch in. Mr. Patnaik said, "I'm taking over the Indian team, 5 crores every year I'm giving. Everything has to be held in Orissa. I will support the Indian hockey team." And see what Indian hockey team did. Both men and women are thriving today. But not just that. What he did was create a hockey culture. So in every village, you must go to the teams there and see in every village they have a team, a hockey team. We in OoC, we have the largest family hockey tournament, but we've achieved nothing. And people are upset because I give that. We have no infrastructure. We just want to, have that as an event and entertainment. I built my own AstroTurf. My husband and I put in the money and built our own AstroTurf in our school, because it's the land of hockey. So everybody has a role to play. And if we have a good leadership, and that's why sports is thriving in the last decade, because the leadership believes in it. And that's what Odisha's leadership believed in it. And that's why it thrives. So it takes a lot of effort. Of course, parents in rural areas want their kids because you have, such great role models from rural India. Whether it's Mary Kom, whether it's the Pogat sisters. You have such great, and they believe in it. They have the drive, they have the hunger. Today, sporting is a big industry, gives you a career. Earlier, you couldn't write tennis my, occupation. But today, you're in a position to write as a sports person that this is my occupation. And I think that has changed.
Ma'am, how do you manage your time? Addressing so many different facets. So, do you have any tips to us, how to prioritize and how to manage time better?
Well, when you're reaching 60, it comes naturally. No, priority, as I said in my speech, is at a young age, it was more about self-learning. And we had to do what we had to do, whether to earn a living, whether to come out, emerge out of that financial situation and be known, also to be able to do my academics and not fall back. So when I have a security as a job, I can always elevate myself in the corporate ladder. So you've got to, as I said, when I'm not in the competition season, then I have to make time for other things that are important in my life. So you prioritize what is the most important first. And that process you must enjoy thoroughly. And if you can spare time, we all want to have our share of friends, fun. Allocate time for all of that. Time away from your gadgets, time for your gadgets, time for your family, time for your studies, time for your exercise. My day begins every day by 5:20, 5:30 in the morning. I'm in the gym by 6. 6 to 8 is my time. No calls, nobody can even contact me. I'm in the gym, or I play golf, or I do yoga. That is my time. And I think for everybody to have that my time is important. It gives you a clear space as to what you want to do in life. And then you go according to that. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, just to take forward the discussion on this, what he was talking about, the competitions of JEE and NEET, that is getting tightened day by day. That, in fact, the kids have to decide now as early as age standard whether they want to become doctor or engineer, and there are centers to run this in a very orderly way. And there are schools where the demands have become so high that kids log in about 8 a.m. and they are out only by 8 p.m. or much later in some schools I have seen. So this is where, especially when they are in that 13, 14 years, where they have to, where as you rightly said, they mature into some sports arena. This is where they have to make or break. So that's where I think that question came up, the parental discrimination, what they think. So I think it's a good thing. So in this aspect, since you run a school of similar nature, what is the stand that you have taken in your school?
I offer from grade 9 students to opt for commerce or science, especially my sports athletes who are in the national level or the state level. They don't have to do all the 14 subjects. Yes, I have parents who will come up to the principal, not me, to the principal and say that on engineer madlebeku, nammanele engineer, ellaru engineer avun madlebeku. It is, no, you have to see what your child likes. We can only guide them to that. And today, India's, has a gamut of areas that a child can excel. Humanities itself has so many avenues that a child, it's no longer engineers and doctors only. There's so many things, and I think parents should look at that seriously. It's more of innocence. Your neighbor has done that, so, my child should also be a doctor. It's not possible. It's just not possible. Because eventually, when you force that upon a child, in today's world, we know what all is happening in our society today with young kids. Right? That is what is leading to all the ills in society. And I always say, when I was the Karnataka, a member of the sports policy with Mr. Kasturi Rangan as a chairman, we went in from primary education to higher education, and I was just begging everybody. I said, whether it's science, commerce, arts, or humanities as we call it, give a sports option. because sports is growing. You have sports entertainment, you have sports sciences, you have sports management. There's so many avenues that you can think of. Allow these children, allow these athletes to take up those fields so that we can, it's still very regimented. So we have to look at our education system and actually bring about a change in the mindset of parents.
Yeah, I am also associated with one more organization called Prayoga, where we are trying to design some syllabus, how to teach physics, chemistry, maths for sports people using their sports.
Absolutely.
So that I'll connect with you later.
Yeah, I tell my teachers also, you want to teach physics, chemistry, take the child on the track. Make them do an activity which is related to that concept. Teach them, because it is interdisciplinary after all. It can be, but are we using it? That is the question.
Thank you.
Hi, ma'am. Yeah, when you participate in the bigger events, how do you hold your nerves and what kind of mindset you have to win the finale, like finals? What kind of mindset you have that?
Everybody on the track has tensions. They always have butterflies, whether it's Ben Johnson or Usain Bolt, everybody. But how you show and how you convert that tension into positive energy is what matters. And that's something mind training teaches you. Is where you're on the track with everybody and they're announcing your name, it goes, your heartbeat is, how you bring down your heartbeat. You should be aware of every tension from your shoulder. Normally, when you're tensed, you normally have a little tension on your shoulders. How you become aware of it. This needs a lot of training mentally, but also practice. Practice is very, very important. It's, on the field, it's no longer everybody, as I said, works extremely hard on the field. The winner is the one who is absolutely mentally tough. Usain Bolt does all those action to energize the crowd, but that brings him that positive energy to do well. Right? For me, it was like people called me Flojo because I was in a different gear from the rest of the field. But that gave me the confidence to do well. So for each one, it's a different way in handling a situation on that block. So it needs a lot of practice, more than physical practice. I think she was raising a hand.
Hi, ma'am. Very nice to have you here and listen to your talk. So you mentioned that because you were busy with sports and everything, you didn't have a chance to go to movies or go out with friends. So are there times where you feel that these are some of the experiences that you had missed out on?
Not really. I mean, it's been after almost 3 decades, I have reunited with my grade 10 batch of 1984. So you make sacrifices somewhere, but you reunite somewhere else. But that sacrifice is to achieve an end goal that I had planned for myself. And everybody, whether it's the family, it'll be in your family or any child's family, sacrifices need to be made. And if you are firm in the journey that you want to undertake, then there is no question but to be at it.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Ma'am, I don't know current situation, but what is the main reason and the different between why we are depend on a foreign sports psychologist?
Today we have psychologists, but we largely depend on them because we always feel the white skin is always superior to us. They know better. And that's why I said Indian Institute of Science should take it up seriously and get that pool from within our own community into the sporting world so that we can showcase what India can do. If we can have precision in Sindoor operation, we can do it even in sports.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking out time and sharing your insight with the scientific community. I'm sure they have gained so much by this interaction. With a small token of appreciation, may I invite Sandeep Menon, our in-house sports scholar.
Sandeep is a known person, so I'll take it from you.
Thank you so much. Please join for tea outside in the reception hall.